Hey everybody, we are on the home stretch of our survey of Exodus through Deuteronomy. I want to talk with you today, really part 1 and part 2 next Wednesday, about Moses' last words. We're going to be in Deuteronomy in just a moment. Before we get to Deuteronomy, can you meet me in Numbers chapter 20? I want to go back with you. Numbers chapter 20. It is a major turning point in Israel's long wandering journey to the promised land. We're up here with them in the wilderness of Zin. In Numbers chapter 20, Moses is an old man. There are many of the children of Israel who have not survived their time in the wilderness because of the way that they have interacted with the promises and the expectations of God. In Numbers chapter 20, verse 1, the people of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and the people stayed in Kadesh. And Miriam, she was the sister of Moses, right? She died there and was buried there. Now, there was no water for the congregation. We've struggled on that front, right? Where there is a lack of water, and rather than looking to God with faith, we've heard more than once the people assembling themselves together against Moses and against Aaron, and here in verse 3, they quarreled with Moses and said, "Would that we had perished when our brothers perished before the Lord." That's not a good attitude, is it? That's not a good mindset, a good expression of a God-centered heart. Moses and Aaron, they go to the tabernacle, they fall on their faces, and the Lord instructs them in verse 8 of Numbers 20, "Take the staff and assemble the congregation, you and Aaron your brother, and tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water." Now, if this was the first time God is miraculously providing something like water in the wilderness, this would be incredible, right? And it is incredible, but this is not the first time by any stretch of the imagination that God has miraculously provided water in the wilderness. God tells Moses, "You tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water. So you shall bring water out of the rock for them and give drink to the congregation and their cattle." Moses took the staff from before the Lord as he had commanded him. However, what happens next is one of the most defining moments in Moses' life. He's been leading these people for 40 years through the wilderness. He's 120 years old. He's exasperated. He's been through a lot, right? Listen in verse 10 very carefully to the language. "Then Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, 'Hear now, you rebels, shall we bring water for you out of this rock?'" We haven't exactly heard Moses talk like this before, have we? Verse 11, Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice. And water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their livestock. But is that what the Lord told Moses to do? It's not, is it? And in verse 12, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe in me, to uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land that I have given them. That is heartbreaking news, isn't it? These are the waters of Meribah where the people of Israel quarreled with the Lord, and through them he showed himself holy. Now there's a lot to talk about here, but what we have heard is after all of this leading, after all of this wondering, Moses is not going to be the one to lead the children of Israel finally into the wilderness. No, in Numbers chapter 27, we read about Joshua. You remember him? He's a younger man. He is one of those 12 spies that had gone up into the land. It is Joshua that is appointed by God as the next leader in Israel. Joshua will lead them across the Jordan River onto this conquest of the land of Canaan. So let's go to the book of Deuteronomy, the last book in our survey this quarter. What is the book of Deuteronomy? Well, it really is the last words of Moses, a series of speeches where he reminds the children of Israel and he warns them, he challenges them and encourages them to live as the people of God. And we'll wrap this whole study up next Wednesday evening. But for now, let me walk you through just a few of the key points at the beginning of Moses' last words. Really, chapters 1 through 4 are, this is how we got here. Moses rehearses a lot of the history that we've been studying together this quarter. From the end of Deuteronomy 4 all the way through chapter 11, this is who you are to be as the people of God. In chapter 5, he reminds them of the 10 commandments that were the basis of everything they were going to be as the people of God. For now, turn over, if you haven't already, to Deuteronomy chapter 6. In Deuteronomy 6, after rehearsing their history and reminding them of the 10 commandments, Moses highlights the greatest commandment of all. You can see it in Deuteronomy 6, verse 4. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. What made that the greatest commandment of all? We'll talk about it. How could they take these words and put them on their hearts? We'll explore that together. For now, go to the next chapter, Deuteronomy chapter 7. Moses reminds them and challenges them in Deuteronomy 7 and 8. You must remember the Lord your God. In fact, here's what he says in Deuteronomy 7 verse 6. You are a people holy to the Lord your God. That's really been the theme of our entire study this quarter, hasn't it? The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for his treasured possession out of all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. These people were to be different. These people were to shine as lights in the darkness, right? Let's wrap up today's session here in Deuteronomy chapter 10. Chapters 10 and 11, Moses asks and explores with them, What does the Lord your God require of you? In fact, that's what he asks in Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12. And he provides the answer. He requires you to fear him. Fear the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways, to love him, and to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, and to keep the commandments and statutes of the Lord, which I am commanding you today for your good. What God has commanded was for their good, and it's for our good. So let's talk about it. What can we learn from that last episode there in Numbers where Moses makes a big mistake? And what can we learn from his last words in Deuteronomy to help us live, even today, as the people of God? Thanks so much for being in class. We've got one more in this whole series that we'll tackle next Wednesday. Hope you have a great rest of this class, and I'll see you real soon.